So welcome to the March member meeting. We have an agenda, a loose agenda for tonight's meeting. We're going to welcome new members. We're going to do a little bit of officer and board introductions. We have a super brief announcement on upcoming things. Paul's going to talk about what we're doing with our bees. Then the all-important get on the swarm list. Howard's going to tell you how to do that. Darryl's going to go over some of the how to get your passport. Robin Belts is going to talk about our annual census, and then we'll end up with any sort of bee questions. I'm sure there's some new beekeepers on who are probably just excited just to get started beekeeping. So we'll answer your questions at the end. And welcome everybody. We have 42 new members in 2022, so it seems like it's slowing down a little bit. We are a club that has over 600 primary and associate members, so we're a big club. We love our bees for sure, so a lot of us are a little bee obsessive, but that's okay. And we also love to, it's good to love your bees by planting too. So it's been a plug. I'm trying to put more plugs in for native plants and the responsibility beekeepers have to sort of take care of the environment, which we all know about, and you know, plant plants for sure. So welcome any new members. If you're a new member, you can introduce yourself in the chat and Mark will shout you out. But welcome everybody. I'm stressing this a little bit this year. This is my beekeeping year. If you don't know Hiroshi is a club member and one of my favorite guys in the clubs because he's always thinking and always innovating and always doing new stuff. And you know, he's truly a gem. So when I think about, you know, the importance of knowing your bee calendar, you know, the bee season and what the focus is on each month, and this is really important for new beekeepers, you know, to sort of get a feel of this. And we're in March, and for those of us, you know, March is about getting bees coming out of winter. Hopefully we all have some bees that survive the winter, and it's about making sure they aren't going to starve. So making sure that when they need a little feed, when it's cold and wet for a week, that we are there to help them. And surely, you know, at the end of March and the beginning of April, we get into swarm prevention a little bit, but it's really feeding March. And then you'll see as we progress through, and we'll try to have the club events and the club programs and the club meetings sort of focusing on these different topics for the month. So that's the bee calendar for sure.
So George, we have a couple of new members on. We've got Jess Dries, who's out of Overbrook Park, and we have William B. from Clifton Heights, Mike Wyant from Lincoln University, and Jeff Murphy from what is that, Powtown or
Cowtown?
Poughton.
I'm not sure where that is, but welcome everybody. No, welcome all the new members. If anybody else is up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and bored, please send me an email. I'll chat with you then. So welcome. Yeah, so learn the bee calendar for sure. You know, March is feeding. This is a quick introduction. I'm George Dado. I'm the president, and this is my 3rd year being president of the club. We have 2 vice presidents, Mark and Paul, who are on, a treasurer, an assistant treasurer, and a secretary and assistant secretary. So we've expanded our officer pool because we're a 600 member club, and there's a lot of work that gets done. And then we have a 7-person board of directors who sort of make sure that we're meeting the mission of the club. We have 15 committees. Tonight we're going to hear from Darryll on the education committee. We're going to hear from Robin on citizen science, and everybody's welcome to join a committee if you'd like. So if there's a particular area that you're interested in or want to help out in, just go to the homepage and you can join a committee. And there's a picture of Jeff Eckel there teaching. And it's just a reminder to register your apiary, especially if you're a new beekeeper and just getting bees this year, it's the law to register your apiary with the state. And I should have put the link on there, but if you go to the state PA bee site, you can find the link to register your apiaries there. So don't forget to do that if you're a new beekeeper. Brief announcements. So if you don't know if the conference is this Saturday, the conference is this Saturday. So we still have registration open. Registration will be open until like the early mornings on Saturday. So if you're not registered, please register. There are new kits on the storefront. So if you don't have a new kit and you are thinking about increasing the number of colonies, it's a great resource to have. They did go up in price, but I can assure you they're cheaper than if you get the new kits anywhere else. So there's deep and medium new kits on the storefront. Just a reminder about the grant program. We are accepting grant applications up until 3/31, and then the application period will close, and then we will make sort of decisions on what grants we're going to be giving out soon after that. If you go to the homepage on the website, you can get more details about the grant program and how to apply. But we're down to the last 2 or 3 weeks on that. So I know they usually come in last moment, so please get your grant applications in. A lot of people have asked about wax dipping. We are going to wax dip the weekend of April 2nd and April 3rd. April 2nd, Saturday, will be at John McElvain's, which he is up in Exton off Route 30, and he'll be wax dipping in the morning. And then I will be wax dipping in Glen Mills on Sunday, pretty much all day. So if you're interested in getting any of your new equipment wax dipped, it's a great way to get that done. Seed starting is every Thursday. Just as a plug, we're starting seeds for the plant sale, and Friday night bee chat. Things in the pipeline that you'll hear more about next month is the plant sale. We buy maybe $5,000 worth of plants and sell them to the members at cost. So it's a great thing to get your native local plants. The Queen program will be starting in April, and you're going to hear a bunch about the apiary rebuild. Those of you who are not new in the club know that the flood in early September pretty much wiped out our apiary last year. We did have some colonies that survived the winter, which is amazing, but we'll need to rebuild that, and that process will begin in April and go through May and June. So just if you do have some extra resources or some extra bees, just be willing to help us out as we rebuild our apiary this year.
George,
yes?
We're going to, when we're done with the meeting, we'll put the PowerPoint slides that you have up on our club website. We got a couple of people asking for it so they can listen and not have to write down all the information.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a plug on volunteering. I'm really trying to promote the idea of volunteering this year. Like I said, the club has gotten very large, and we have a lot of stuff going on with events and programs which are serving many members, and we need volunteers. These are what below is the insulated new covers that we for the Queen program over the winter. We had a bunch of people help out with that, which was great. So if you go to the homepage and log in and click under members menu, the volunteer tab is there. You can just check on if you have any time. Even if you can do one event a year, it makes a huge difference in us continuing to put out our programs. Coming up on the 19th, which is next Saturday, Ed Sharp and his nuke team are going to be he's going to be packaging the nuke kits. So we're going to need some volunteers for that. I think we had 3 or 4 people sign up already, but a few more hands will make that go quicker. So again, please consider volunteering this year. So that's that. A lot of people are looking for bees this time of year. Just a plug, if you have nukes and you have nukes to sell, you can post them on the want to sell forum on the website. I know there's a few members that posted in the past week that they had bees to sell, which was great. Overwintered nukes are really your best choice for a proven colony that's most likely to survive well up here, but there's other options too, spring splits,
like Baker's halfway.
non-local nukes and local and non-local packages. So you know, if you need bees, there's lots of options out there. I always tell people that
yeah, keep looking.
make sure you know your bee supplier. They should be a good, reputable person. They should be willing to answer your questions and hopefully help you a little bit as you get your bees set up. And if you want to, as we talked about earlier before the meeting started, there's lots of swarms in Chester County in late to mid-April and May and June, and you can catch free bees. So there's nothing wrong. There's no rush in this. So consider putting up a swarm box and catching some free bees. So this was one of my hives that I checked on today. You could see that it's still sort of in cluster a little bit. It's got a little bit of food up top and it's alive. So I was happy with this. So I'm going to turn it over now to Paul, who's going to talk about March colony management. So Paul's one of our vice presidents, and he's a backyard beekeeper. He keeps anywhere, I don't know, 3 to 6 hives or so. He does an incredible job with just sort of knowing what's going on with his bees and managing his bees. So he's a great role model for sort of the most of us who are just backyard beekeepers trying to keep healthy and productive bees. So thanks, Paul, for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome, George. I'd like to start off with the flight of the bee. Well, anyway, where we left my hives last month was I had 3 dead outs. So this was dead, this was dead, and this was dead. And we're just, these were all cleaned out, waiting to transfer. And I was going to transfer my nukes, 1 nuke, 2 nukes, and 1 back there on the far property line up to these dead hives. So plug for nukes. Make sure you have backup nukes because they're a great resource hive. So anyway, I took advantage of a nice sunny 61-degree day on February 11th. And I moved my 3 nukes into their new homes right in this apiary room. And then here's what it looked like on February 13th, 2 days later. So I took advantage of the real nice window, but I've got the nukes all transferred to these hives, the main hives, in a 10-frame Langstroth box. And I've got them all wrapped up with tar paper. So what I ended up doing was moving this nuke 1 foot. I moved this nuke 6 feet. And I moved this nuke in the back about 60 feet up to here. And I did that strictly to keep track of the genetics of my lines. So they ended up in this configuration on February 11th. And if you remember at the last CCBA meeting, someone said, well, should you move a nuke? And Tim Ferriss replied that there's going to be no problem moving nukes within an apiary at this time of year, because the bees are so confused that they have to fix on their GPS location daily. So it wasn't a problem. And in fact, it was a very smooth transfer. I just moved my nukes. I just opened up the nuke boxes and took out the 5 frames on the top and plopped them right into their new home. And I supplemented with 5 extra frames of food and a spirulina patty. And the bees loved it. They were even fanning on the edges. And the fanning means welcome to our new home. They're blowing the scent around. So that went pretty well. So then on a bee chat on about a month ago, there was a bee chat discussion that made me reevaluate hive ventilation in winter. So what's different from this from this picture to this picture? There's a little less snow, but what I've done here is plug up the hive entrances. So I plugged up the hive entrances and I had 3/4 inch holes here. and I put a cork in it. And I put foam in the inner cover space. And the reason was I reviewed several articles in American Bee Journal, one by Derek Mitchell in August 2017, one by Brian Hesbach, one by Dewey Karen in November 2021. I put these all in my newsletter if you want to reference them. So it seems that if you radiate or if you insulate well on the top of the hive under the outer cover, then more heat is lost through the upper vent than if it's uninsulated. And the reason for this is shown in this slide. So the reason we didn't worry about ventilation was, I think, from this guy, Edwin Anderson in 1943, who said heat is not lost through the upper entrance. And what he did was put a 15-watt bulb in a hive, and he put a temperature probe at the top, and he measured the ambient temperature at the top. And then down here, he put a vent in the hive. So he opened up the upper vent, and he said, there's no difference in the temperature from an uninsulated hive that has ventilation and one that doesn't, because he had the same temperature with these probes. But this is in a uninsulated hive, so most of the heat is lost by convection, and there's a relatively small temperature gradient that goes up to the box. And what is reduced, which Edward Anderson didn't know because he didn't measure it, is the heat pool. The heat pool shrunk with an open entrance, but it's not that bad in a uninsulated hive. So Derek Mitchell in the American Bee Journal in August 2017, he rebutted the finding of Anderson and had a bunch of engineers look at this kind of configuration. And so Anderson's only flaw is that he had a single point for the temperature. And that's why he said heat is not lost through the upper entrance, because he didn't measure anything that was below it. But what these engineers did, they repeated this, but they had probes all over the place, and they found that the heat pool shrinks. But what they were striking finding was that in an insulated hive over here, of course, you get much greater heat gradient. It gets a lot hotter in here because less heat is lost through convection because you have this insulating cover. So it gets a lot warmer up here, and the bees are really cozy. But what happens when you ventilate is that the hotter air is much more buoyant and much more active. So it comes whooshing out through the top vent, and the cold air comes whooshing in through the bottom vent. And what happens is that your heat pool markedly shrinks. So you got all this cold air now down here with an insulated hive. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but it's because of this heat buoyancy, air goes whooshing out and you shrink your heat pool. So all the bees in the cluster here, the ones in the bottom half of the cluster, are freezing their little butts off. All right, so that was good enough for me. There's more details in my newsletter if you want to investigate those references on yourself. But the big thing is the heat pool is diminished, and therefore I said it's not a good idea to try to keep these newly formed hives cold. So I plugged them up, especially this one had a little less bees in it. And I wanted to make sure that when they started laying eggs, they were nice and warm in there. So if you have, again, an insulated cover on the top and a foam board underneath here, you're not going to get frozen condensation that will later rain down on the bees. It may just drip, but you have a cover in there. You have socks or a blanket that covers up the inner cover hole, so the bees won't get wet. The condensation with an insulated cover, the condensation will just run down the sides inside and provide the bees with a water source. So anyway, that's my thought, and I'm sticking to it right now. So this is what you should be seeing in your hives right now. In fact, I went into my hives on February 23rd and found brood. And they found sealed brood too. And it was 65 degrees on February 23rd. So that means the queens had been laying as early as February 14th. And this is the accumulated growing degree days, again, from the National Phenology Network. And the blue line is 2022. the white, yellow line, green line, whatever this is last year. So it was much colder last year. Last year, the bees didn't start laying until March 3rd. And this year they started around the 14th. So I had determined previously that my bees start laying eggs when it's around 100 accumulated growing degree days. So 100 was right about here on the 14th of February, whereas last year 100 was way out here in March. So you can see that this year is following about the 30-year average. The black line is the 30-year average. So right now, 2022 is tracking along the 30-year average. So I think things are at least 2 weeks earlier than they were last year. So be aware that it is a warmer year, but remember, March is a fickle month and you can lose a lot of bees in March if you don't pay attention. So what I'll be doing with my bees this year, how do I get these guys? Okay. So place a tray or hang a tube of Ultra Bee powder or some other kind of powder, at least 100 feet from the hives as an alternate pollen source. Although I have seen that the red maples are now blooming quite nicely in my area. So the bees, when it gets warm enough, will be out looking for their own pollen. But Ultra Bee is a good substitute pollen, and the bees will go to it and they'll find it if you put it in a tray or hang it in a tube. And when there's sufficient pollen for their needs, then they'll drop this like a hot potato. Also, you can feed with small pollen patties or spirulina patties. Check for honey around the brood nest. So when you find the brood nest, make sure that honey is around them so they don't have to move too far. When it gets cold, they have to run back in a cluster. So move the frames if needed. Add fondant if you think it's needed. And you can add sugar syrup now 1-to-1, but only if it's warm, only if it's above 50 degrees. If you want, you can put a in-hive frame feeder. Some of them hold a gallon. So you can hold a gallon of 1-to-1 sugar syrup. That's 1 part sugar to 1 part water. And the added advantage is if you have an in-frame feeder, it stays warm in the hive and the bees can help themselves do it as they need it. It's a good early spring boost, 1-to-1 syrup, but it has to be warm. Another thing you might want to do when you see the brood, when you're following it, equalize your hives. Move sealed brood to a weaker colony. So my big hive back here, this had a lot of bees in it. It overwintered really well. And when I went in the other day, I found there was 2 frames of sealed brood up here. So I gave one to this hive over here because it had less bees than these other 2. So I will continue to monitor this hive and try to equalize the number of bees in all the hives. You don't want to have one get an advantage over another. You want to make sure all your colonies build up to the same strength. But keep the hive wraps on. Like I said, March is a fickle month. It can get warm and it can get cold. Keep your moisture blankets in there. But you might want to cover some ventilation holes. Give a thought to what I said there. Read my newsletter. And you might want to plug the holes while the small clusters are trying to lay eggs. If it gets too cold, they won't be able to do it. And then just to touch base with March, order nukes. If you need to replace bees, order new equipment, make some new frames, repair and paint the old equipment, and review your hive notes from 2021 and figure out what you did wrong, what you did right, and what you might want to change this month.
Paul, what time of the year are you thinking about opening up your ventilations that you plugged up?
Oh, it depends. It's going to depend on the temperature. If it's a real nice day, I'll open it up. But my point is, if you have a small cluster of bees, it's hard for them to thermoregulate efficiently when they have wild temperature swings. So they may be reluctant to start to lay eggs. But if you give them a little extra warmth in there, I don't think the condensation is going to hurt them a bit. If you give them a little extra warmth in there, it might allow that small cluster to expand readily.
How about rotating boxes? When does that start?
Maybe the end of the month, but you know, if it's nice, I can do it the end of the month. But to be safe, you can wait till April. And the idea of rotating or reversing deeps is to put the queen right now is up on the top. The idea is to put the queen back down on the bottom and then put new frames above her. So she'll have more space to lay and can move up and expand the colony without getting stressed.
Yeah, but when you reverse boxes, right, the heat's up in the top of the hive, as Paul showed on the on his chart. So reversing brood boxes, you're taking your brood and putting it down low. You just have to be careful about temperatures, right? So it's one of those things where beekeepers know the kind of the weather and the forecast. So you're not gonna reverse your boxes with 20-degree nights coming up. That would just be dangerous.
So usually by the end of March you can do it, but sometimes you can't. So I have to wait till April. But it's all season dependent.
Yeah, but it's usually the first, right? It's the first swarm management thing that most of us do who overwinter in double boxes is to reverse the boxes or switch the boxes. If you overwinter in a single deep, then usually the same time you can add a second deep to it. If at the end of March, beginning of April, you can put on on your first super to give them enough space. It's all space management, and we'll do more swarm stuff next month. But swarm management's basically space management.
There was a question about a quick homemade substitute instead of buying a pollen feeder tube. Two people have responded with links to ideas on how to do that.
Yeah, I've seen some in, I guess, Bee Culture magazine. It's just a 4-inch PVC pipe with some gutter attachments on the ends. And that's a pretty nifty one.
Yeah, and be careful of how much pollen patty or pollen sub you're leaving in the hives right now, because you're feeding your hive beetles too. So I always tell, if they're your home hives, just put in smaller amounts and see how they do with it, instead of putting a huge pollen patty in and having the hive beetles take over your hives. So
I had a question about the plugging of the upper entrance.
Yes.
Will that be something you do throughout the entire winter in the future, or is it just a March?
No, I will. I'm
Temper.
going to try it. I mean, there's a number of club members here that plug their upper entrances, or Ed Sharp uses styrofoam hive boxes, and he does not have any upper ventilation. His bees do fine.
Cool.
But it's as long as you have an insulated top. You must have an insulated top. Otherwise, the moisture will freeze up there, and then when it gets warm, it'll drip down on the bees. But if you have an insulated top, moisture may condense. But if you have a little spacer up there that has socks or blankets in it, moisture control, then it won't rain down on the bees. It may just drip down through the sides. And then that's good for the bees in the winter to have a little water source.
I ran half my hives this winter with upper ventilation and half my hives with no upper ventilation, and I don't think it made much of a difference, honestly. They both survived, and they both.
How about food consumption?
And I didn't have enough scales on them, Paul, to really make an assessment on that. And some of my hives are bigger than others, so colony size makes a difference to food consumption for sure. But they look equally as healthy, though, so.
I had heard that if you do have a lot of ventilation, then the bees, if they have a lot of food, they'll eat it.
Right.
They'll eat more of it.
And I think there's data to support that, right? Like if you insulate your hive and you don't have as much heat loss, well, then your food consumption is going to be less over winter, which makes sense. I had some of my hives only consume, again, they weren't small clusters, only consume about 10 pounds of food over the winter, which didn't have upper entrances, which is nice because I'm trying, again, it all comes down to your management, right? And I'm trying to, historically, we fed up hives to be over 100 pounds going into winter, and that's a lot of sugar and a lot of syrup. So I'm trying to see if I can decrease the amount I feed them in the fall. But again, it's all comes down to management on what you want to do and how you want to approach it. So
I ran no upper entrances this year, and my hives spent almost the entire winter in the candy board, ate all the candy boards, but hardly ate any of the honey stores. So I think it definitely made a huge difference in their consumption.
you thought they consumed more with no upper entrances?
They consumed all the candy board, but didn't consume any of the honey stores.
Huh.
And now I don't have enough comb space because they've ate all the candy board, but none of the honey stores. So
Do you think it's because it was warmer up top? They moved up quicker?
Yep, definitely. They were,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Huh.
Regina, when did you put your candy boards on?
I put them on in like late October, November, and they were, but yeah, I normally put them on before winter, when I wrap my hive. So
One conversation I had with Jeff Eckel in the past several years ago was that putting them on too soon, like say some people do it before Thanksgiving, brings the cluster up too early, and then they don't move back down to eat the stores and make the space for brood. That's just one thought with that situation.
yeah, I mean, I do it just so they can propolis the shims and everything, but I do tape the shims to keep them. But yeah, I think next year I'll try it without the candy boards and then just do some supplemental feed. But they hardly ate any of the. I was in a couple of my hives last week, and actually they're bringing a lot of nectar. I mean, they were backfilling nectar like crazy. So, but I'm in Montgomery County, so I live in a parkland. So,
Well, that's probably red maple nectar.
yep.
And one thing about that for the new people, it's very watery. So when you examine the frame, don't tip it upside down. All that nectar will run out.
Yeah, I actually lost one of the hives because it literally rained down on the bees. The nectar, it was so wet, it rained down on the bees. I lost one hive.
Just have to twist it laterally.
Yeah.
I ate some comb honey this last week when it was warm. They had built some burr comb up at the top of the hive, and there was some nectar and some of that new burr comb. Oh, it was so good. I don't know what kind of nectar it was, but oh my goodness, delicious.
So that's a good question, because I have a lot of them building burr comb up in the shim.
Right.
Would you suggest putting on a box with foundation because again, the bees have no space down because they haven't eaten any of the honey stores. Should we, would it be you're giving them more space, obviously, and there's more change in where the heat.
I think you could add a box to the top if they're not small, right? If
Yeah.
they're larger size and they're building burr comb above, I would take that shim out and maybe just add put a box above it.
So Mike Landry asks, before you rotate, do you make sure the brood is not split between boxes? In most cases, I know the bottom is empty.
Yeah, you don't want to split your brood nest. That's one of the things. If you're rotating boxes and your brood nest is between the two boxes, you could when you split it, you're gonna take the bottom box and you're gonna put it up top, and that little bit of brood that was in the bottom box is going to be at the top of your hive now, and that could be death to that brood. So yeah, it's one of those things you got to be careful of when you start rotating your boxes.
So let's say down the bottom, I had frames 4 and 5 that had brood in it, and then up above it, 4 and 5 as well. I take the 4 and 5 and move it down to 3 and 6.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And leave the brood still below.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point of mentoring. I think there's all different scenarios and situations that I think having a good mentor, doing the apprentice program and learning the ins and outs of these subtleties helps for sure. I don't think you're going to kill a hive by splitting the brood, but you could definitely set it back and you can lose some brood in doing that for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the keys that there is what you're doing is they're going to try and cover it all or at least half of it anyway. And you'll probably lose at least one half of it, going that way by bringing it back down and keeping that brood together. When you do have a cold day, the cluster stay with where the brood is.
Yeah, and we're a big Demery club for sure, because Keith, the past president, I guess he's the George Demery of the 21st century. He Demerys all his hives every week for 30 years, and he still can walk, believe it or not. But yeah, that's one of the things about the Demery. Same thing. It's like, when do you first do that? Because you're basically splitting the brood nest, and anytime you split the brood nest, you're at risk for chilling brood. So I think the bottom line right now is I think we're all okay by not doing too much brood manipulation right now, at least until the end of the month or the beginning of April. I don't think we're going to have any hives swarming that early this year. Now, with that said, if you have a booming hive and you open the box and the bees are flowing out of it, sure, you may need to reverse those. They may have brood all the way through that top box in a week or two. I doubt it, but there may be some strong hives out there that may be early swarmers.
So again, spread the wealth. If you have a really strong hive,
Good
move
point.
some of that sealed brood to the other hives that are weaker.
Yeah, absolutely. No more reversing boxes from my apiary, Nancy said. So I have to join Nancy on Bee Chat tomorrow to hear her rationale for that.
Hey, George, you're gonna bring up your slides again?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep moving. It's 7:42. I'm gonna turn it over to somebody. I think Howard's up next. Howard's gonna talk about the ever popular getting on the swarm list.
So every year our club gathers a swarm list that we publish on our website, and we also send it out. Next year I sent it to the 911 group in case they got emergency calls. So this is for mostly the outside world to know who to contact if they find a swarm on their property. Because as you might imagine, a lot of people will freak out when they see a swarm. I always find it a good place to show it up at their site and gather the swarm and not being scared. And I like it when they watch me. So we're going to start to the list from scratch again this year. So you need to sign up again, even if you're on the list from the last year. And to tell us that you're interested, we're going to send out a survey. It's actually out there now. George put it out there, but you said, George, is on the home page, I think.
Yeah, but I can email it out to everybody once the conference is done early next week. But it's on the home page now.
Yeah, there's no real advantage to jumping on it quickly because I'll get to that in a second. So the survey is going to ask for the contact information. We've divided up our area into sub areas: north, south, east, west, Delaware County, etc. One of the big issues is cutouts. By cutout, we mean where the bees would go into a building, usually, and you have to do some destruction, I'll say. You have to be able to get at the bees, and often we vacuum them up and cut out the comb. And so obviously that's a lot different than having just bees hanging on a branch. So we ask if you do cutouts. And I try to explain that to people who are looking at our list. If you have any special instructions, you can add that to the survey. And I'd like to get this done by the end of March, because who knows when they're going to start swarming. Next bit. It's best if you have some experience getting swarms. Obviously, we have to be somewhat concerned about somebody who doesn't know what they're doing going out there and trying to get the bees. So I suggest that if you want to get some experience, contact somebody on your list in your area and see if you can tag along and watch how they do it and hopefully help them. So then once I get all the responses, I put them onto a spreadsheet, and then I used a random number generator to come up with a random number to order the people on the list, because obviously the person at the top of the list gets called first and by most people. So it's only fair to try to make it as random as possible. And as I said, we post this list onto our website and to the 9/11 Center. So if you have any questions or ideas on how to improve the process, please let me know. Notice my shirt says "Give bees a chance."
So question.
Okay, I have a question about this, Howard, and it is, at first, when you said get on the swarm list, I thought I would be putting my name on a list and wanting to receive bees that you caught. But this is people who are interested in going to a site where the swarm has landed. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Good.
Howard, I can attest to the fact that if you're at the top of the list, for a couple years there, I was listed as covering all areas in the county by mistake. So I got most of the calls, and I was able to disseminate to a lot of members, posted on the Facebook group page, finding out if people wanted swarms, knowing where a lot of beekeepers live, I'd contact some directly. But you might want to make sure whoever gets put at the top of the list is
It's okay with being at the top of the list.
well, who's well connected with club members and can get the
Right.
information out there, because that was like almost a part-time job. Kind of fun, but when you're working a full-time job, a little hard to step away and answer all the messages all the time, trying to coordinate a swarm that can move within 15 minutes or half an hour.
I will say I
in the
got,
fall, be prepared for lots of calls about yellow jackets.
yeah. I was going to say, I got about 18 to 20 calls last year, and probably a third of them were, take a picture, send me the picture. Those are yellow jackets. Please call an exterminator. So, yeah, you don't want to, if you get a call, if you're on the swarm list and you get a call, you definitely want to confirm what they are before you drive however long to get to a site to find out they're yellow jackets.
And how high up they are.
And how high up are they? Yeah.
Yeah, but there's lots of beekeepers. Obviously, as we know, there's lots of beekeepers in Chester County, and it's not my bees that swarm ever, right? So it must be must be the guy down the street whose bees are swarming. But anyway, it's a great way to increase your apiary size for sure. And it's really simple to do. Just fill out the survey that's on the homepage. And Howard, I didn't realize how many swarm calls there were every year until being president and working with Howard. And I'm like, yeah, we need to get this done every year to make sure the community knows that. And please be nice to people. This is a little bit of our interaction with the community, right? So we like people to like us. So please be pleasant, and please, if they call you and you can't do it, make sure that they kind of can, maybe recommend somebody or at least help them out a little bit, because we don't want to get a bad reputation of having swarms all over the place in Chester County that we don't take care of. So please help the community out. Thanks, Howard.
About how many swarm calls do we get from the 911? Does anybody know?
Yeah, I don't have a way to measure that, but last year I think seemed to be the first time we've ever done that.
We wouldn't get the call from 911. 911 would tell the person calling in, please go to chescobees.org and click on swarm. Yeah, so we won't know.
Yeah, most of the calls come in to Kathy or Chris, our secretaries who manage the I need help email box. So
it's not a bad idea to be proactive in your township and let them know, your township's 911 call center, or even your township office, and say, hey, I'm a local beekeeper. If there's any swarm calls, here's my contact information. It's always good to reach out. If you know any local pest control people, it's another good place to network with.
Somebody was going to ask a question.
Never mind.
Sure. Jess, come on.
No, I'm totally sure.
Go ahead.
I'm like, are people seriously calling 911 for a swarm?
Oh,
Like, seriously? That's
Seriously.
people do that?
Yeah.
So that's a
Seriously.
shame. That's absolutely a shame.
Yeah.
New York City has a beekeeper on staff. That's a policeman.
Several policemen. But here's another good question to ask. When people call you up and say they have a swarm, make sure you ask, did you spray them with anything? Because if they did spray them with wasp killer and stuff like that, you don't want to bring that back to your apiary site. And people do this and they don't disclose it all the time. Be very specific and ask. I deal with this, especially with cutouts. Make sure you ask the right questions.
And we definitely need more people to do cutouts. I know Tim Ferriss did a lot of them, and I think Ed did a few, and Justin, I don't know if you still do a few cutouts, but I know that's something you need some training in, but there's a big business out there, and a lot of people call them because they got bees in their roof or bees in their wall. So, and that you do charge for, that's, usually don't charge to collect a swarm off a branch, but if you got to, remove bees from a house, that's definitely something that, you're going to, that's not a free service generally.
Yeah. And George Watman asks, cutouts are a huge labor sink. What do people charge? Whatever they can get. And I talked to a couple of guys that do them, not in our club, but in other areas. And, it could be thousands of dollars depending on how much cutting out needs to be done and how high it is, how deep it goes. It can be very expensive.
I know a guy, I met him at the bee shows that I used to do or still do. And he retired to Martha's Vineyard. And he's the cutout guy on Martha's Vineyard. So he's able to, make an annual income doing that. So that's a special place though. So
10 grand a pop, right?
Yeah, 10 grand a pop to take bees out of your estate on the vineyard, He's a cool guy though. Anyway, so I'm going to turn it over to Darryll to
One last thing for the swarms. A good thing to ask is what size is it? Because, people will say I've got a lot of bees. I always ask them and I go softball, volleyball, basketball, and it kind of gives me an idea of what size am I looking for, or what equipment I might have to bring.
Whether or not it's going to fit in a nuke box or a 10 frame box or anyway, I can go on and on. So I'm going to turn it over to Darryll right now to talk a little bit about where we are with our passport program.
Okay. So George has a nice passport slide up here. If you don't know what the passport is, Passport's our new educational tool. It's part beekeeping reference, part hive record, part friendly competitive game, part scavenger hunt, but kind of all fun and all educational. Basically, as you attend meetings, attend club events, learn new skills, you can collect points in your passport. You can add your point stickers to those areas of the passport, courtesy of Better Bee. And the passports that have all been ordered are mailed out. Did anyone get one today? Did you get one today, George?
No, I didn't check the mail though.
Should have them by tomorrow. I tried to get them to everyone before the conference. If you ordered last night or today, it's a little iffy. I'm doing my best to get them to you, so we'll see if they get there. But even if you can't have it by the conference, order a passport if you haven't got it yet. Let's see. So there's tons of great beekeeping stuff in there. It's a nice reference tool. We've got pictures of what's on a frame, and especially as some of us age, we never see eggs. So there are lots of pictures of eggs there so you can see what you're missing. There's the bee cast life cycles, what's on a frame. Like I said, hive records, how to tell a queen from a drone from a worker, all these kind of things. There's our beekeeping calendar, just about anything you can think of. It's a nice quick reference. If all that doesn't entice you, there's lots of good prizes. Right, so as you can see here, we have some limited edition collector pins. And I mean, they are limited. I'm not going to say they're limited and we actually have 500. They're limited, so accumulate your points quickly and you could get your newbie pin or graduate to your sustainable beekeeper. Or if you work really hard, you could get your achieve your beekeeping enlightenment and become a sage. Get that pin. This is going to be really hard to get. Other than that, there's lots of other great prizes. So I'm going to announce a prize here. We also have sort of a scavenger hunt Easter egg built into this passport program. So when you show up to the meetings, you'll get a clue, and you can use those clues if you're a amateur detective to try and find the really high value prizes. So can I share my screen, George?
Yeah, let me stop sharing my screen and then you can share your screen.
Oh, there's my face. Okay, let's go here. Okay, so if you don't know how to order the passport, just go to the home page, to the website, chescobees.org. There's a picture of the outside of the passport. Order your free passport. Now, click on your passport here, add it to your cart, and put in your details. It's obviously free, so you don't have to do worry about that. Let's see. Okay. George, where do I get?
You add it to your cart and then you can check out.
Okay, that's where. But I want to get to the page where.
Go under Learning Center.
Okay. Where?
Or it's passport. Go hit passport.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There's a passport button there.
There we go. Okay, so now if you want to see kind of what kind of things are in the passport, if you don't have your hands on it yet, George has it outlined here. So today's meeting, grab your 2-point Better Bee sticker and put it on the March meeting area or visa area of your passport, and you've already started accumulating your points. There's obviously a big honor system component to this. We are going to audit this a little bit. You know, if you check off everything in a week, it might raise some red flags, but generally beekeepers are pretty honest people. I know we do see a little bit of hive robbing out in California and a little bit around here, but I think we're all generally pretty good with the honor system. But anyway, so then we'll have a leaderboard so we can see who's leading and what categories. But you can see here, you know, becoming a mentor is obviously going to be a high point value. So you get 3 points for that. Catch yourself a swarm, do a mite count. The things that require really a lot of engagement or that we think are super important to being a sustainable beekeeper are going to be higher points. But obviously there's ways to collect other points, especially if you're a new beekeeper. You're going to be doing a lot of new skills, so you're going to rack up points doing that. So when you get your passport, you'll see there are blank areas, and that's for write-ins, because as the year goes on, the committees are going to add events that we haven't done before, or members might have suggestions of things we can do. So you can add those in, and we'll show here what the points for those are. So you can put your sticker and collect those points. And once you've done a few things and you want to record the points with me, then you go here to your passport, fill out the survey, and then I'll have your points recorded. So that's basically how to get your passport and what you're going to do with it. And now I will move to this. So the first prize, we're giving out a good prize to the first person to order a passport. That was Steve Keller. And I know Steve is on here tonight. So Steve wins a smoker. We're going for high value prizes here because we really want a lot of participation. So Steve, you got yourself a smoker for being the first person to order it, you know, outside of me and George and Mark. Because we had an advantage. We were, you know, knew when things were coming down. So the first person within reason outside of the officers was Steve Keller. So
Congratulations, Steve.
Congratulations. You're well on your way to becoming a sustainable beekeeper if you aren't already.
How does
awesome.
Steve,
Thank you.
How does Steve get his smoker?
I'll contact Steve.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
And now, if you want to get an even higher value prize, then here's your first clue. So write this down. People who didn't show up don't get this clue. So if you want to up your odds, don't tell your friends what the clue is. Or if you want to be nice and lower your odds, you can spread it around the club a bit. This is your first clue. If anyone's from Montreal, this is an actual word over here, but if you're not, it's nothing.
Darryll, we only see the Chester County Beekeepers.
Yeah, we can't see the clue.
Oh, okay.
We're all waiting with our pens and paper.
Oh, geez. Okay. This is what happened last night with Mark. Okay.
Yeah,
I think I'll stop sharing and then I'll reshare.
There you go.
Here we go. Yeah, okay, I must have sounded pretty weird talking about stuff. So can you see this text edit window?
Yes.
Okay. So here, this was my big announcement. I guess that was kind of a bad reveal. Steve Keller wins the smoker. And then here's your clue. This is a clue that will help lead you to a very high value prize. We're not talking $5 hive tools here or, $1 queen grafting Chinese tools. These are really high value prizes.
That's all we get?
What's that?
That's all we get.
That's it. That's the first clue. Keep
Where
coming
do
to the
we
meetings.
get
You'll get
our
more
answer?
clues.
Where do
Somebody
we-
might even find this on the second clue. I'm guessing it's going to take till 3 clues, but we'll see.
And I assume you need to be in the passport program to win this prize?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Where do we send our answers?
It will be perfectly obvious. You won't need to send answers anywhere. You will arrive at your destination. You won't need anything. You will be there. I don't know if that sounds ominous or vague, but don't worry. You don't need to tell me anything. The clues speak for themselves. All right. That's all I got, unless there's
I think
any
you
questions.
lost us, Darryll, but so the next clue, next meeting, I assume?
Yep.
Okay.
You got it. Got to come to meetings. It's how you become sustainable. So you come to a meeting, you get good clues.
Thanks, Darryll.
All right.
This is we're very excited. Darryl's super excited, and the rest of us are very excited about this passport program. It's really a great collaboration between industry and a club, and I'm so excited to see how this goes. It's us working with Better Bee and we've gotten Montgomery County and also Philadelphia County on board with this program too. So we're just hoping that people have some fun with it, win some cool prizes, get educated, and become sustainable. So again, thanks, Darryll, for doing that. And I'm going to think about
George, there was one question. So there's no cost for the passport. You have to purchase it, but it's $0 to purchase it on the storefront.
Yeah, it's free. Doesn't get better than that. Beekeepers love free. And Steve just won a smoker. So he, this is the best thing since spread for him, so awesome. Thanks, Fred. Just ordered one. It's really simple. Just order your passport. They're really cool, actually. They're really well done, and it's been a fun thing to do. And we like to thank Better Bee too. I mean, Better Bee, has been a great partner, and support Better Bee. Anyway, so we're going to move on. I know I'm 8:04, but we started late. I'm going to turn the meeting over briefly to Robin Belts, who is our citizen science lead, to talk a little bit about our annual census.
Okay, thanks, George. So George asked me to take over the citizen lead from Ray, who was the lead for the past few years. So I'm a second-year beekeeper, and so I'm dependent on my fellow citizen science committee members. And two things that the citizen science committee is responsible for is to create the surveys that we put out every year. And we just activated the annual census, which everyone should do if you would. You can just click on the homepage of the website to get into it. And obviously it's only for members only. I was, like I said, a first year beekeeper last year. So I actually took the survey, and I encourage people to do that, even if you're just brand new, because then that way it gives us an idea of how many people we need to educate, with different things. So definitely do that. Been getting good comments from people that have done it already. And we're looking at a 10 to 15 minute use of your time. So again, every member should participate if we can, and we'd appreciate it very much. The results will, once we close the survey, we'll analyze the results, and that will also be published in a future meeting. The other thing, even though it's not about the survey, I'll do it real quick. The other thing from a Citizen Science Committee is this year, as I really kind of want to get everybody involved with science of the bees. And if what I'm proposing is we set up like a project request type of form on the webpage. And if anybody has a request to do a project, then we in the Citizen Science Committee would do that project. George and the board of directors have been good about, we're going to have 3 or 4 hives in the apiary dedicated to us. So we're going to try that out this year. So there'll be more details to come about that. And that's it.
Thanks, Robin. So the census is the annual census we've done the last 2 years, and it really helps the club kind of have an idea of what our beekeepers are doing as far as mite checks and nuke building and how many packages and nukes are we buying that aren't local versus local. Just trying to, as a club, figure out what we need to focus on to make us all sustainable. So I set goals, as you know, on this one. I'm going to bug people until we get 50% of the membership to fill out this census, because otherwise I really don't think it's representative of the club. So, just do me a favor and fill it out. It really does help me get a big picture of what the membership is doing. So, like Robin said, it only takes about 10 minutes to fill out. It's pretty simple compared to some of the surveys that are out there. And we need people to join the Citizen Science Committee. There's definitely, I encourage people to join that. And I want to support the projects that the Citizen Science team wants to do, so we can all learn a little bit from each other. So that's a plug for Robin and his group. So excellent. Thanks, Robin. That 8:08 mark, not bad. Come on, give me some credit.
Not bad at all.
That's all I get.
Well done. No, I was talking before you unmuted. Yeah, great job, George.
Hey, George. Yeah. Go.
Yes, yeah. Give me some love, Howard. I'm not gonna get it from Mark. We didn't start until like 7:05. I ran 3 minutes late. So anyway,
you did good, George.
I can do it, Mark.